at a time where, maybe some of us or most of us were raised, let's say, in joint families, right? So there were always like one dada dadi, one chacha chachi, and there were like three kids, four kids growing up in the house. Somebody or the other was taking care of different responsibilities. Somebody's feeding the children, somebody's ensuring they're going to school, someone's doing their homework, someone's ensuring they're going playing, whatever. But now all of that is falling on just the parents, and in most cases may not even the help of grandparents or in-laws and so on. So how did the two of you balance? And I know both of you have different ecosystems. So I know, Swati, you'd mentioned on the support system part. So I do want to call that out of what is that support system?
Yeah.
How did you build it? And how can someone build it? When should they build it, etc.?
Yeah. In fact, if I have to say, the summary of whatever I will talk today, if somebody has to listen to, the most important takeaways, I think this will be the support system piece. And especially if you are in a setup, so all four parents of us were working at that point in time, and we knew that that's not going to sail through. So there's a primary option, there's a backup option, and then there's a last resort option. Like in most truest form, you have to actually build your support system like that, right? Let me just quickly take a step back first of all. So when I was saying 4 to 6 months, right now, 4 to 6 months is when my journey started to think of a person who will be at home and who will monitor the baby every single minute that I'm out of the house, right? I was working with Zomato, and Zomato had 5 days in office. And for this one simple reason, I really want to thank COVID, the change that it has brought in our lives. One, the entire hybrid remote model, which was unheard of, and B, just being more cognizant of your own priorities. Like you start seeing your life in a very different format, tomorrow.
Yeah.
And in our own circles, etc., or extended circles, we have seen people reaching, drawing the last breath, etc., etc. So I think it were those times when your priorities were also settling in, but I also knew there was like a line of hope that there is something called as hybrid and I can make it work. Because imagine two parents going home, and of course I know the concept is there in Western countries, but it's, I don't know, coming from a family which is very, very, how do I say, we were a close knit family, joint family, as you said, Lochan. It's hard to imagine, and it would both justifying outside as well as justifying myself that we both are going for work and leaving the baby at daycare was not sounding. And I know a lot of parents do that because, as I said, each one with their own circumstances. So in my
Yeah.
case, I just took a call where I said that I want to take a model, and I'm also harping over the fact that there is no choice that is wrong or right in this position.
Yeah.
Every single
Absolutely.
parent wants the best for their baby, and the choices are purely made out of these circumstances. But I'm purely talking how we dealt with it. So the first step was just finding the right nanny, and this person did become the most important member for me in my family, sometimes more than the husband, if I may say so. Because you are leaving, see, house help and everything, you're still leaving some valuables which once gone, it's okay, you can still buy them again. But the leaving baby with someone is something which is it requires like enormous level of trust with that person, and you have to train that person, and you also have to make sure uh, that you deliver your values to that person, because that person is spending 50% of the time of the day with the
Yeah.
nanny, the baby is spending with the nanny, and hence the right values also go to the kid. For example, if I really, just hypothetically saying, if I really want sharing to be a big thing, or if I want my child to be more social, and I know every child is different, but if I want certain values to be delivered, the medium, the messenger for me is this person, and hence finding the right nanny was supremely important. So what we did was that we created like a ecosystem of people where we said that we will have cook, maid, and nanny, and so on and so forth. This will be the distribution of work. And it took a month, as easy as it may sound, but finding, going through, it's a pure HR role. You have to like speak, you have to do so many interviews, shortlist, find out, as funny as it may
Background
sound.
verification.
Yeah, then background verification, and then what not, like, and while all of this may sound so stupid to somebody who is not yet into this journey, but this all is real. And then post doing also, you have to manage their growth aspirations, their stories, and so on and so forth. So it's a proper managerial HR role that you have to manage with your nanny. But what we did was essentially that I switched. I had quit Zomato because, although they were kind enough to give me that flexibility, but what I realized was that when everybody in the company is working, full time in office, I didn't want to be the privileged one. And at that time, I was managing a big team, and I didn't want to be the wrong example for the team. And I felt that, it's time that and given I have options to go for a remote or a hybrid role, I chose that option. And currently, what we also try to do is that we ensure one parent is at home, and both of us have taken hybrid roles, so we ensure one person is at home, along with, of course, the nanny. But there are several doubts, questions that the mothers usually have at this point in time. Should I opt for 12 hours? Should I opt for 24-hour? Sometimes your parents, so we don't have our parents at home, but even in case of parents, I strongly believe that it's important to have a nanny, even if the role of the in-laws or parents can become like a supervisory or monitoring role. But there is so much of a running around that you have to do with the baby once the baby turns 12 to 14 months and so on. So, okay, by the way, when you are hiring a nanny, you're also not sure how will my life change. Right now the baby is on milk, will go to semi-solid, solids, and so on and so forth. How what is the requirement? What is the job description of nanny? That also you're not aware.
This is the most evolving. This is the job description in a startup. हमें आपको
बस
सब करना
exactly,
पड़ेगा.
it's a fluid role. आओ सब करना है. But yeah, I remember that time, and I would like to call this out. Leaving Zomato was not easy because I spent 15-20 days just with myself. And at that time, I was still feeding the baby. She was like not even one yet, and cluster feeding, sleepless nights, everything was going on. And at that time, to even think, see, there are many variables in your life already. You don't want to change that one variable, but then when you realize that okay, this variable will also change, you have to prepare yourself. And then uh, getting mentally prepared is the first thing, and then of course studying, preparing, appearing for interviews, and so on and so forth. So I remember that time when the baby is not even one, was not a easy phase. But as Akanksha said, once a woman has decided for something, then she'll go after it. So I think that was precisely the thing that happened with me. And I think I must again reinstate the fact that it brings a lot of clarity to your life. Motherhood does bring you that. It makes you, as I said, well, strong but vulnerable, super confident but underconfident at times. Like we do become, we are in that phases where we are like कि, कर पाऊंगी नहीं कर पाऊंगी, हो पाएगा नहीं हो पाएगा. But eventually once it sets here, then you are like, you are through. So yeah.
So, Kangsha, how was it for you? I know uh, you were very vocal about the support system and
Yes.
as much help and as much villagers that you can gather.
Right. Yeah. And I find myself to be, I used to think that I was a very peculiar case, but over time I've realized that each of us is just very, very peculiar in that sense. And I think peculiarity is perhaps the name of this
Mm,
parenting game, okay? Because, so unlike Swati, my mom in law actually lives with us, right? So when we were expecting, we thought cakewalk, she's with us. Who can you trust more than family, right? And she's wonderful. She's extremely helpful with my daughter. She obviously she loves her to bits. My daughter loves her to bits. But here was something that we had to think about over some time, and we started thinking about it while I was still on my maternity leave. She had very recently retired. She actually retired 2 days before my daughter was born. And was it really fair to her that she's just kind of found freedom from the grind, and now we're like, ab aap bacha dekh lo. you know. That's, it didn't seem like it was the right thing to do to her. I will, say that she never once said, don't do it. She said, whatever you guys need, I'm here, right? Let me know. She's obviously relatively young, she's very, very physically able, right? But we both kind of talked about it, my husband and I, and we realized that, nahin, we need to get somebody who's tasked, who's paid to do this work, right? And my mom-in-law can be a great supervisor to that person, right? I will admit that this was such a great decision, and I think I would tell everybody to go for that model, even if they have a parent figure, like Swati said, at home. Because there's also something else that motherhood brings with it, right? Even the most relaxed person wants to be particular about certain parenting styles. There's no right style, right? There's no right style. Breastfeeding versus formula feeding, baby led weaning versus traditional weaning. There's no right, there's no wrong, but there is always a preference that a parent has, specifically a mother has. Okay, typically the primary caregiver, let me say, right? And I had that too, right? And it was so clear to me that had I not had the nanny, expecting a mother-in-law or a father-in-law, both, or even a mother for that matter, to parent your kid, but to do it in this micromanaged fashion where you tell them, look, you will take care, but you will do exactly as I say. And
Correct.
I was particular. I am controlling to the point that I want to control the script also. Okay, and like I literally want to say कि अगर वो गिर जाती है तो आप ये नहीं बोलोगे कि बेटा don't cry, right? You will tell her that, oh, you must be feeling pain, it's okay to cry. But how do you manage the script that somebody also uses, right? And honestly, you can't manage it entirely. But what you can do is, when somebody is your employee, you can honestly just put it in their job description and the requirements and the scope of work,
Yeah.
right?
The ever
But you
evolving scope of work.
the
Yeah.
ever evolving scope of work, right? And but you can't do that with a family member. And I think innumerable women in every mother's WhatsApp group, mother's community, just a bunch of mothers talking together at work, will have a list of complaints against their mother-in-law or their own mother after they become parents themselves, because I think this clash is very, very
It's
real, right? And I have learned in my time that there is no real solution to this clash other than to take off the pressure from them. Because here's the thing, as as the grandparent, they are also trying their very best, right? They are also operating out of nothing but love, right? But their way may not be your way. Things have evolved, science has evolved. The advice that doctors give today is different from the advice that was given 30, 40 years back, right? And you want to kind of be evolving, and you want to say that you're done with your time parenting. One of the most classic debates that happens between parents and their parents is that you've done the raising, no, now this is my time to raise. But I wish that people also realize that the counter to that would be, yeah, but you're leaving your kid for me to raise, so I
Correct.
am still raising. And if you don't empower, so where I fully agree with Swati on, identify what kind of support system works for you. And while there isn't a best way, I do find that one of the more efficient ways is this overlapped sort of space where you have somebody that you employ for this. If you're able to, and I know that this is a little bit of privilege talking, and I'm kind of cognizant of that, but I think one of the things that also works is, let's say you have a nanny, but do you also have somebody else who comes in to, let's say, cook, or let's say clean, even if they're part-timers, right? They come in for a set period in the morning or whatever, but they become these familiar faces for your child. And when the nanny goes on leave, or maybe she quits and you need to replace her, you need to be mindful of the fact that your child looks for those anchors at home, and you don't want to completely have a shift in their lives at certain stages, especially if you're away, right? There is an ideal case, right? A 24-hour nanny, parents-in-law, both of you working from home. There is that ideal case, but everybody doesn't get that
Yeah.
ideal case. And I think
Absolutely.
it's not practical to kind of say this is the model that works. I think the other thing I learned the hard way, and is that while I realize that I'm a very controlling person and I like to make sure that I absolutely define what is done and how it is done, I learned that success actually comes when you empower the people who are taking care of your child.
Hmm.
And I learned this the hard way. I learned this because in the face of an emergency, and touch wood, there was no major emergency, but even small emergencies, right? Baby is gagging on her food, for example, not choking, but just gagging. I need them to not feel powerless and think we need to call Akanksha, and if Akanksha doesn't pick up, like, what on earth do we do? I need them to know what to do, right? And the only way I think anybody picks that up is if you empower them to say, you know what you're doing, right? Do it.
Hmm.
You know, take that call, take some calls. You
Hmm.
may not agree to allow them to take every call, but it's important to also at some point figure out that balance of, I want to control the narrative, but I need to let go, right? And I started honestly from a place where I controlled every minute detail. We had an Excel sheet.
Hmm.
We listed out the tasks every from the wake up morning to bedtime sleep, and plan A, plan B, and plan C. Right. So who is plan A person to handle this activity, and who is plan B? And I'm talking everything from every diaper change to who's going to wrap up the diaper and throw it away. Literally, I said I'm going to control every minute detail, and naturally over time realized that that was not the most sustainable model.
Yeah.
We had, I mean, where I did not leave control. So that's the other thing, right? You have to identify your spaces where
Hmm.
you're not ready to leave control,
Hmm.
right? And at any workspace, I think this applies to, right? There are things that you micromanage, and then there are things that you delegate,
Hmm.
right? And I think you have to identify those in the family as well.
Hmm.
So I know, for example, that my daughter's food was something that I was very particular about, right? And I was I had terrible food habits growing up. So did my husband. So we were really particular that our daughter eats a balanced meal to whatever extent possible. So food is something that I till today have a WhatsApp group where the meals of like the breakfast, lunch, dinner, what is she going to eat for snack one, snack two, snack three is well defined. We plan it in advance and we make sure that groceries are ordered and food is prepared and whatever is done. So I feel like you can choose to retain control on some things, and then you have to choose to slowly start giving away. And I think one thing that I would say to every new parent, and especially the primary parent, is that you will always think that you don't know how to let go, and you'll always eventually find that balance. I
Hmm.
think someone, and honestly, I know everyone thinks they are the biggest extreme, and like that, I used to think that I am the biggest extreme of controlling and all of that. But even I have found my rhythm. You know,
Hmm.
I found I get moments of bliss where my daughter is not around, and I have to admit that it's blissful.
Hmm.
You know, taking that time apart, getting away, taking your time off, like it's all, I think over time you ease into it. So I think one of the fastest and more efficient ways is to find that support system. um, I'm a strong advocate for employees in that
Hmm.
support system,
Hmm.
whether or not you have that family support. So if you can somehow pull that off, great. We also did not choose the daycare route, but of course, that's another route that I know a lot of parents who are very, very happy with that route have chosen. So you need to do what you need to do. But one thing that I agree with Swati on completely is start a little early,
Hmm.
right? Do those mock-ups, those dry runs, right? The nanny is one of the most important influences on your child.
Hmm.
Your child will in the first 2 to 3 years pick up a lot of personality traits
Hmm.
from the nanny as well.
Hmm.
So if you care about your child, for example, being more confident or more social, you need to find a nanny who speaks up and talks
Hmm.
confidently.
Hmm.
If you want, like, there are many certain different things, and I think we don't realize how much a child learns by observing.
Hmm.
And if they are spending 50-60% of their day with somebody, they are going to pick up those personality
Those
traits. So you
personality.
need to, it matters more than we realize.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
And
Yeah.
one thing that I think so beautifully put, Akanksha, I think, Rochan, this is like the most important part. And inevitably, I must say that every woman, I'm sure, like to a decent extent, is a overplanner, overthinker, and so on and so forth, and are control freaks to a certain degree. But letting go just becomes so important. And I think when I said finding the support group, uh, I I did it very early. I really realized that my resume, myself, and my kid, and my home, all four things can't look good at the same time, right? And that
Hmm.
thing came to
Hmm.
me very early, that I'll have to let go. For
Hmm.
example, I was very picky
Hmm.
about, house being in a certain shape and state.
Hmm.
Now I'm like,
Hmm.
I just don't care. I'm like, eventually the
Hmm.
priority goal, and I remember talking about this in of experiences as well when we had the workshop.
Hmm.
I had that clarity even then when I think we were speaking when I was in my when she was 5 months, and today she's 20. That thumb rule hasn't changed. My
Hmm.
home is in a super messy state, but when I come back home, she's supremely happy. And letting go, once I found that right nanny or whoever is the support group, now I trust them because the trust is also
Hmm.
mutual, right? Once
Yeah.
she'll make a mistake, but I'll help her understand what went wrong. And then, as long as the blunder is not like to a different level, that's of course a different story. But usually, that's when I said, delivering the values, that's what I meant. Once the handover has happened, now the trusting process start, and then now,
Hmm.
it's completely on her. And the second point that I also wanted to say, it actually, this entire saying of it takes a village, it's absolutely true. I have learned the merits, I'm seeing the merits of a kid spending time with a lot of people. Today she is about to turn 2 in next 3-4 months. She's not going to any play school daycare so far, but I make sure, and I stated this earlier also, since she was 5-6 months, I make sure that she's meeting at least 15 to 20 people a day. There are kids who come to
Hmm.
our house, she goes to
Hmm.
the park, and so on and so forth. But I'm actually taking a traditional way. I'm taking more traditional way, opposite to what's more common in our cohort right now. And my mother says this, that she was also a working woman, and she tells me that, don't worry. The child will still grasp the most out of what you will deliver to her and the time that you will spend with her.
Hmm.
And it's never the
Hmm.
quantity of the time. it's about
Quantity.
it's it's about the content, and hence about, more about the quality of the time. So just make sure when you're back home, then you are switched off, and just give
Hmm.
a good time to her and the exact values that you want to be delivered. So I think I'm just following some of the traditional rules, and I don't care कि अगर नानी ने उसको चाय के साथ बिस्किट दे दिया तो I right now I'm like in a very let go mode, जैसे चल रहा है पलने दो बस, like the child should
Hmm.
be happy, that's
Hmm.
it. So that's, and every parent has a
Correct.
different parenting style, but that's what I'm following. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I know this is this is one part that we keep talking about even in the program and cohorts, to say that you can't control everything, and you have to, just like at work, you have to recognize what's my priority. At home, you have to recognize what is a non-negotiable from a child, and it can't
Correct.
be everything is non-negotiable, right? Then it's not a non-negotiable. Then it is, then you're trying to, like I said, control every single dimension, and in the process you are setting yourself up for failure more than anything else, as because there will be times when there will be blunders, there will be time when things will not go right. And like you said, Akanksha, I think the part that you correctly said is, if there are going to be people around me, if they need me every single moment, then why are they there? Then that doesn't work. And I think that the same concept even applies to women at work as well, right? So that's usually the challenge. Women are either like quite a bit of micromanagers even sometimes at work, and that can also lead to their own um, clashes with their teams, and so on, and they become um, indispensable. And when you become indispensable at two places, then you're obviously going to be like torn apart completely. So it's going to be that much challenging. I'm coming back to one point with both of you said multiple times, saying that motherhood brought a lot of clarity to you, right? On different pieces and different things. And I've heard this from a lot of people, saying motherhood brought a lot of clarity. And this is one of the things that we keep sharing back with organizations, also saying that, look, it's not that she doesn't want to come back to work. And because, her family is not allowing, or motherhood is the only priority, but she doesn't want to come back to this work or this environment or this manager or this team. And she obviously doesn't want to say it out loud, and sometimes maybe feels it but doesn't acknowledge it or openly accept it. So for both of you, what were those clarity moments, right? I know you both took different paths for different reasons. So what were those clarity moments? How did those decisions come about for you?
Right. So
Akanksha, you want to go first?
Sure. Okay, so for me, I think I know exactly what happened, right? I came back to work and I was offered a promotion. I resisted it at first because I am like my type. I am I'm an overthinker. I thought 25 steps ahead and said, I won't be able to do this, right? The increased expectations, the increased bigger team, everything, it wouldn't be possible for me. I said, I'm sorry, but I don't think I'm ready for a promotion right now. Maybe something else, but not this. But my manager said, look, it's a great opportunity. And as I've already shared before, she was a pretty enabling and encouraging person. So she said, you know what, we're going to make it work. Just take it, right? I'll help you out. We'll make it work. I took it. And I don't think either she or I anticipated how challenging it was going to be for me.
Mm,
This new role meant a lot of travel, right? And I will set out a disclaimer to say that it what didn't work for me does not mean that it doesn't work for anyone, right? I had a lot of colleagues who had been new mothers and had been able to perform wonderfully with the same expectations, right? I think it's just what you prioritize and what you deprioritize, and it differs from person to person. And I just want to lay out that it's not when I say what happened with me, this is my experience and my preferences, but it's not to say that if you choose the other path it's wrong, or I think it's wrong. I don't, right? It just didn't work for me. So with that out, I think one of the things that happened is that I had to travel a lot, and when I say a lot, I mean it was either very very frequent or it was very very demanding, which meant I would get a call in the evening today saying tomorrow morning we need to head out to Jaipur. It's very urgent and we need to meet so and so government official, and this is the only time they've given, right? um it was very hard. Uh, and frankly, not even necessarily hard from a logistics or operational standpoint. I had the support system. I had my mother in law. My husband was working from home whenever he needed to. He was in a pretty flexible hybrid sort of setup. So he could say, guys, I'm not coming into the office today. I had my nanny. We had other people who came in. My mother, who's also retired, said, I can come in and kind of be around whenever you need. So I don't believe that it was the operations that I found challenging. I found the softer aspects of this very challenging. I found sneaking out of the room at 4 in the morning, leaving Malhar sleeping, and then leaving and going to the airport, and then crying throughout boarding, crying on the flight, looking at photos. I found this extremely hard, right?
mm,
Um, I was told, and they were not wrong, it gets easier,
mm,
right? It's like leaving your child at home to go to work for the first time. It all gets easier. But I think for me, what I experienced is that it didn't get easy enough to keep doing
mm,
it, right? For me, at some point, and I think I've shared this during one of our cohort conversations, right? I think I had been in my role, not in this promoted role, but in this org within G. I had been there for 5 years already. And I think I had started to feel like, what's next? Right? And when you start feeling what's next, part of your brain has switched off,
mm,
right? So when that's already happened, a little part is already looking out for something new, looking out for something new. And the promoted role was also very much the same business. So while I was dealing with different aspects of the business, I was still very much part of the same business. But one part of my brain had switched off. And once that has happened, I think any work, once you become a mother, especially, is, and I've said this a few times to people, and I know that it resonates. It's what it pays, but what it costs,
mm,
right? And this keeps happening,
mm,
you know. And you need to, at some point, just make sure that what it costs is not more than what it pays,
mm,
right? And only you decide those values.
Mm.
right? Only you know what those numbers are and what that means, because some of this also cannot be quantified,
Mm.
right? And I don't mean strictly salary here, right? I also mean like a job pays you money, but it also pays you independence, financial freedom, a working woman identity, so much, right?
And the social life
Responsibility,
too, right?
social life, absolutely. So it pays you many things, right? But it also costs you many things, and you need to just make sure that your that balance is working for you.
Mm.
And I think that's what happened to me. I think at some point the payout started to outweigh the pay in,
Mm.
right? And this is purely personal, but I remember instances where even when I was working from home, in the most flexible sort of working arrangement, my daughter just banging on the door and crying, saying, Mama, Mama, please open the door. Mama, please finish your call. It got too hard, right?
Mm.
And it's not, I don't believe even today, and I want to make it very clear to any mom who hears this and feels guilt, right? I want to make it very clear that you're not abandoning your child. You're not wronging your child. Working as a mother is one of the greatest gifts you can actually give to your daughter, especially, right? I
Mm.
don't think I had a working mother, and she was a great role model to me just by virtue of the fact that she went out to work. I've not grown up with stereotypes of daddy works, mama takes care of the home. I don't have that. I have extremely mixed home responsibilities that I've seen with both my parents, and I truly value that, right? And yet, at some point, I realized this is not for me right now.
Mm.
Maybe it will be for me again. I don't know. I will never say never again, right? But I truly learned that the clarity that came to me was, I think with you had your full time job, you had your other responsibilities. You're a daughter, you're a wife, you're a daughter in law, you're a sister, whatever, right? But then you become a mother. Everything else that depended on you previously needed you a little less than your child needs you, right? In the first few years of their life,
Mm.
okay? The need can be fulfilled in many ways. It can be fulfilled directly, it can be fulfilled by setting up a support system. There are many right ways of fulfilling that need. But one thing that doesn't change for anybody who comes into this new role of motherhood is that now your time is distributed into one more space,
Mm.
right? There's one more space eating a big chunk of your time and your mental bandwidth,
Mm.
right? Um, and it's really important that at any given moment, or let's say at least 85% of the time, you feel like you're spending it on something worthwhile.
Mm.
And the minute that 15% gets crossed and you start feeling on 5 days of the week that, why am I doing this? What am I
Mm.
doing? And you start feeling like I'm missing out. I started to feel very strongly like I am missing out on a lot of moments in my daughter's life that will not come back, right? And in fact, Lochan, it was the coaching session that I had as part of the OFEX cohort, where Nivedita had told me, she said, one piece of advice that I give a lot of new moms is don't quit right after your maternity leave,
Mm.
right? Come back, try, okay?
Mm.
Because it's almost to this point, I would say it's psychological, of course, but it's almost starting to feel hormonal and biological that your first instinct is stop,
Mm.
quit. Okay, I
Mm.
think more women want to leave than the women who are like, I'm charged to come
Mm.
back and
Yeah.
reclaim my life. I think that bit comes a little later, right? I think the first urge is an almost desperate urge to say, chuck it, I will just raise my kid,
Mm.
right? I'm not saying everyone can chuck it, but if you can, the urge is very, very strong initially. The urge starts to settle over time as you regain a handle on the support system at home. Your kid starts growing up, they become more communicative, verbally, non verbally, they become more communicative, they start expressing things. Everybody else at home is getting a hang of your child, and you are regaining confidence at work,
Mm.
right? So you're also now starting to go up again. No one remembers your leave anymore. Everybody is like,
Mm.
you're back and you're properly back. Now you're back in action. Um, Things do start to settle. They started to settle for me as well. I started feeling much more comfortable with being back at work. And then suddenly I started to feel the pull again.
Mm.
And when I started to feel it the second time round is when I
Mm.
knew that that's when it became so clear that a part of my mind had actually switched off from the nature of the work.
Mm.
And that I could not solve,
Mm.
right? They can't change the business,
Mm.
you know? And like many, many mothers, for me, my heart said go into the parenting and the kid space. I think there are so many stories of new mothers who decide to become teachers. They
Mm.
start doing Montessori education and they become play school teachers. So I'm extremely aware of not misleading myself, but at the same time I did feel like I did want to do something in this space, and that's why I'm trying to build my own initiative in this space. But yes, I think it became clear to me that if I want to spend uh, time working on something that is not directly caregiving for my daughter, I need to do it on something that is speaking to my soul.
Mm.
And my job no longer was.
Mm.
And I think it was a very clear decision. Honestly, 5, 6 years into that job, I had these thoughts many times, but never as clearly as later. So I think when you have less time, you just are more
More
strict
focused.
about how you want to spend it,
Yeah.
and you don't want to give it away everywhere. So yeah, I think for me, a message would just be keep checking that balance of what does it pay, what does it cost, what does it pay, what does it cost, and figure out how to find as much of a balance as
Yeah.
you possibly can.